James, best souvenirs from your assignments, from your travels?
I would say a Sky News shirt from the France 98 World Cup covering Scotland.
Nice.
And a signed green book from Colonel Gaddafi, who I've interviewed 3 times in my time. What about you?
Very nice too. Well, on the dictator line, I've got a few Saddam Hussein watches.
Wow.
They're obviously fake Rolexes that were probably made in China, sold in Baghdad in around 2004. But the weirdest thing I've got was given to me by a colleague of ours here, which is a little figurine of Carles Puigdemont, the politician from Catalonia. And he's pooing.
Of course he is.
Because in Barcelona, in Catalonia, it's kind of a tradition, a quirky figurine often found, I had to look it up, often found in nativity scenes symbolising fertility and good luck. A popular souvenir, it says here.
Fertility. Wasn't the first thing I thought of when you told me that.
I'm Mark Stone.
And I'm James Matthews. This is day 82 of Trump 100, with markets tumbling again. Trump has been meeting with his cabinet, a pretty strange affair. Think a king and his court. Tariffs, what else? We're up for discussion.
And I've been on the road in the north of the United States, in Wisconsin and Minnesota, speaking to people caught up in the crossfire of this unpredictable trade war.
Mark, we need to talk about Donald Trump's cabinet meetings once again.
Yeah.
It was this game of hero worship around this cabinet table, wasn't it? Secretaries, one by one, thanking Donald Trump for being President Donald Trump. On one view, I suppose it was a kind of show of rock-solid political unity. On another, actually quite a nauseating spectacle. But it's how this government does its business.
It feels like a king holding court with Trump. The sycophancy is quite clear to see. Lots of policies they spoke about were record-setting, the best this in history, the best that in the world. But look past the sycophancy, and I did detect this time a slightly more conciliatory tone given the 10 days that we have just had. Trump did seem to acknowledge some, quote, transition problems with his tariff plan and repeated his optimism when it came to a deal with China. He seemed to think that there was some room for a deal.
Well, I have great respect for President Xi. He's been, in a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time. And I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries. I look forward to it.
We now have some clarification from the White House that the US tariff on Chinese goods is actually an enormous 145%. That's because of a fentanyl tariff of 20%. Remember, that was put in place right at the beginning of the administration to try and counter the flow of fentanyl, the street drug, into the United States. The precursor products, they come from China. So 20% still in effect. On top of the 125% Trump announced on Wednesday, that makes 145%. Absolutely staggering. The two biggest economies in the world in a state of trade meltdown. I've been flying back from Wisconsin over the course of today, but you've been at the White House and Congress. What's the vibe today?
The vibe was interesting, fevered, certainly, on a number of levels, actually. Interestingly, I was at Capitol Hill and it was busy, loads of media around, but you get the idea of how quickly the news cycle moves and moves on. Many American journalists were present at the bottom of the steps. Actually, they were chasing politicians to talk about budgetary matters. That was their story of the day, although clearly tariffs still in the wind. And that, interestingly, you mentioned the 145% mark. It was on clarification of that. That's what turned the markets downward again for the second day running. You know, went down like a Chinese spy balloon on Wall Street. But, you know, in Capitol Hill, it's an interesting place to operate for journalists. There are kind of rules of the road. You can't go on the steps to interview people. You have to wait at the bottom, cameras.
I think you've been seen running up those steps before now.
Listen, what happens on the steps stays on the steps. But yeah, so we were there actually looking for a reaction on tariffs because clearly still a story. Democrats are actually calling for an investigation. They smell market manipulation in all of this. Because remember, just hours before his announcement that spiked the markets, Trump posted on Truth Social, "This is a great time to buy." and he tagged DJT. That's the stock symbol for Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Truth Social. I spoke to both sides. First of all, from the Republican side, Troy Nels. He's the representative for Texas. He couldn't be more Texan, this guy. Looks like he's stepped out of a Disney cartoon. He approached me with cigar in hand, and when I, extended my hand for a handshake, took the cigar, put it in his teeth. Hi, yeah, Troy Nels. So we spoke to him. You'll hear him. First, though, we spoke to Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. She's the Democratic representative from New York. Do you have questions about market manipulation on the back of Donald Trump's tariff move?
Absolutely. I have many questions. Frankly, if I was at the oversight committee, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you should be opening an investigation. I believe that Chairman Comer should be opening an investigation into, again, bipartisan. I do not care if you're a Democrat. I do not care if you're a Republican. If you are trading individual stock when the market is being manipulated in this way, you need to answer for it. And again, I don't care what party you're from.
When he posted on Truth Social, this is a great time to buy DJT, which is the stock symbol for Trump Media and Technology Group.
Donald Trump is a businessman. He's a smart guy.
But did people get rich? People close to Donald Trump get rich?
Did you get rich?
On knowledge.
Did you get rich?
I'm not that close to Donald Trump.
Well, I didn't get rich either. I would have never sold. Don't ever sell your stocks. Don't sell you. The people that sold, they panic. That's what the left wants to do. They want America to panic. They love that, don't they?
Yeah, in contrast to some of the administration's claims about all this past few days being some sort of Trumpian masterstroke, there has been some reporting out today from Politico suggesting that actually it was last weekend. Remember, up until that point, the direction of travel seemed to be that this was not a negotiation. There were no negotiations to be done. This was resetting the world economy. These were revenue-generating tariffs. There was nothing anyone could do. Enter Scott Bessent, who interestingly is of the money men in the White House, the more measured, relatively speaking, of them. He is a man who favors targeted tariffs, not blanket tariffs. He went down to Mar-a-Lago on Sunday, conversation with Donald Trump, changed the messaging, or we risk the stock market crashing even further. So I think that's interesting. He's, as I say, not the maverick that many see Peter Navarro being, or the full throttle tariff proponent that Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, is. It seems as though Bessent was the last one in the room over last weekend, warning Trump that things could go wrong. Yeah,
we're left with questions around Donald Trump, aren't we? For all the talk of a master strategist, artist of the deal, it's fair to ask if this is a man with a plan, or is he a man who's actually just bounced by events? He's created this 90-day window for negotiation, and you see the value in that. Countries that have been allies, they'll have been reassessing their self-interest, their trade interests, looking at a global trade landscape and very possibly reorientating themselves away from the United States. The US needs alliances in a trade war with China, and there's now an environment, I suppose, where the immediate pressure has been lifted. The question is, why did we have to endure the chaos in the first place, the collapse in the markets before we got here?
Yeah, you talk about countries reassessing their trade interests. I do think, Donald Trump talks about the long-term plan. This is going to be making America great again. I wonder if the long-term consequence is going to be a fundamental rejigging of the world order, decoupling being the word. Europe is already finding itself having to decouple itself from America in terms of military, NATO, all of that. They don't feel that they can rely on the United States now. So there is a rapid decoupling going on in Europe in terms of geopolitics. I think the same is the case to the extent that they can with economies as well. They are seeing America to be such an unreliable partner. And the same is the case for China as well. I mean, obviously, China and the United States are competitors, but their economies are so intertwined. And yet I was struck in a report by our colleague Helen Ann Smith that she did yesterday from Beijing. She had a Chinese trade expert on who was talking about the Chinese rapidly decoupling their economy from America. I think that is going to be the medium to long-term impact of this past week.
Yeah, and, for Trump, he's a man who was elected into the White House because everybody was excited. His backers were excited about a Trump agenda that was built on deregulation, tax cuts, business freedoms. It wasn't based, or their faith in him was not based on uncertainty. We have seen the consequences of uncertainty, the volatility that creates. In the past few weeks, we saw it on Wall Street. We've seen it in companies screaming at Donald Trump to pull back from his tariffs. So, the uncertainty of entering this trade war and where that goes and what the consequences of that will be, that's not why he was voted in, and he will be acutely aware. So, Mark, you have been on assignment, travelling this week, and we've finally got time for you to tell us all about it. Wisconsin, yeah?
Yeah, Wisconsin and Minnesota. I guess one positive byproduct of the market chaos is Donald Trump has made tariffs interesting. At least I find them interesting because it's allowed us to really understand the remarkable nature of our interconnected world. Who knew, James, that there was a seaport full of massive ocean-going vessels that is in fact 2,000 miles from the nearest sea?
I did not.
Yeah, nor did I until I went there. Duluth Superior. It takes in a huge amount of trade, generates $1.6 billion a year, supports more than 7,000 jobs, and it is the key in a supply chain that stretches so far beyond into the United States. And, a ship sailing through these Great Lakes, the Seaway to Duluth, crosses the international boundary between Canada and the United States 30 times. And as we were arriving there was a massive cargo ship just docking. The Great Lakes freeze over for a few months over the winter. So this is the first ship to arrive, and it was being loaded up with grain, American grain, that was heading all the way to Algeria. So you really got a very visceral sense of this huge port, and just how important it is regionally and actually nationally as well. We spoke to Jason Ron, who is from the Port Authority.
I guess this is a time where you're kind of a bit anxious. We're in the unknown at the moment with the tariffs.
Right, it's early in the season. Everything still remains to be seen, but it's certainly a season of more unpredictability than we've seen in the past few years.
Which is, I guess, not helpful. There may be opportunities out there, but right now uncertainty isn't good for business.
Unpredictability is problematic for ports and problematic for supply chains.
Jason, he really seems to speak to that uncertainty that everybody is feeling, doesn't he?
Yeah, supply chains of all types hit businesses, big and small, but the consumer and the voter as well. And as we drove on from the port, we stopped. This is always a thing that I enjoy in our job, and I think punters must find it so strange when we jump out of our car microphone and just sort of start asking them random questions. But Americans, perhaps more than any other country I've worked in, are so up for talking. And we bumped into this guy, Grant Everett. He is a pest exterminator. I kill rats, he said to me. A guy who, by his own admission, is struggling with life. And paycheck to paycheck is what he said. And we got talking at a gas station in Wisconsin.
How would you describe life at the moment, for you and your family?
With just paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's scary. We're barely hanging on, trying to raise families with food, and they just keep raising our taxes and our energy bills every year. The power and the water and gas just keep going up. I don't know. I'm scared of what's going to happen with that trend. So we had to try something different. We had to try Donald Trump. The Democrats say they were for the working class, but they did nothing for us. Nothing. They left us out here. They all got rich and passed their green energy bills with our tax dollars while we're sitting here struggling to pay the bills. We didn't vote for Donald Trump because of Donald Trump. We voted for Donald Trump because of the working class's economic situation.
So Grant used to be a Democrat. He voted for Obama, but as prices kept rising, he started to feel that the Democrat politicians were basically screwing him and screwing the middle class. And he reminded me of what I've heard so many times before, heard it all the time on the campaign trail, the core of why people voted for Trump in 2024. It wasn't necessarily about Donald Trump, the man. It was about their back pocket.
And from Grant the rat catcher, Mark, you spoke to farmers as well, yeah?
Yeah, we headed on into Wisconsin to the Wisconsin's Fields of Gold, the state's vast soybean farms. These little beans are the biggest export from the US to China, totaling $12.8 billion in trade. You can see why the soybean farmers might be a bit nervous. Do you know what soybeans are used in, James? Don't look at your script.
Dinner?
Yes.
Export to China?
Yes. Animal feed, tofu, soy milk, soy sauce, salad dressings, biofuel as well. President Trump, remember, this is all about bringing American business back to America. He suggested that American farmers can make up the difference from any shortfall they have through issues with selling to China because of tariffs. They can make up the difference by selling more of their products at home. And he posted last month on social media. So the great farmers of the United States, get ready to start making a lot of agricultural product to be sold inside the United States. Do you know what the problem with that is, James?
Tell me.
Well, there is very little domestic soybean market, so they have nowhere else to sell it. So you can see they are very worried. Tanner Johnson is a local farmer. He's a soybean industry representative. He talks regularly to politicians in Washington.
I don't want to put a exact timeline onto when doors close around here, but you know, if it's short term, I think most farmers can handle it. Long term, years plus, things are going to look a lot more bleak around here.
Now, Mark, something we neglected to mention in yesterday's episode was Trump's new shower policy.
Yes, I saw this.
Yeah, he's lifting restrictions on water pressure in showers. He signed this executive order to, and I quote, "make America's showers great again, so he can," and I quote again, "take care of my beautiful hair."
Goodness me. A weird one, this. I sort of dug into it a little bit because I couldn't quite understand his preoccupation with executive orders on showers. Turns out there is motive behind it. Trump is ending what he called a radical green agenda, which made life worse for Americans. What he's doing is rescinding a change brought in by Obama for environmental reasons, which restricted multi-nozzle showers from discharging over 2.5 gallons of water per minute.
He's a populist who knows where the popular vote is, isn't he? I wonder, on the day the tariffs were all over the news, markets tumbling, he talks about powerful showers. And, you know, to a lot of Americans, that would have been the story of the day. That's what they want to hear.
Yeah, and he has said it's ridiculous the amount of time it takes him to get his hair wet in the shower.
Yeah, go on.
Well, you don't have that problem, do you?
Aye, baldies have showers as well, you know. Well, there you go. That's it for day 82 of Trump 100. Thanks to you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the feed if you're enjoying our podcast.
And as ever, if you have any questions, do send them our way. The email address trump100@sky.uk, and we will answer some of them this weekend.
We'll be back tomorrow for day 83.
Bye-bye.
All the best.